Aaron, welcome. Have a seat.
Thank you for seeing me.
Yeah, no problem. How was the drive-in?
Oh, it was alright.
Yeah?
Took me a little bit to find the place, but...
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you found it. I'm glad you were able to come in today.
Yeah, that's good.
So, I'm Olivia. I'm the social worker here at the clinic. Just a couple of things since this is the first session. We're probably just going to kind of go over some goals for counseling. We'll talk about maybe some reasons that you're coming in. And we'll probably talk a little bit about confidentiality, and I want to address any questions or concerns that you have while you're here. So, to start, I want to explain my role as a social worker here. Being a social worker is kind of a broad topic. A lot of times people come in and they have different ideas of what social work means. My role here at this clinic is as a psychotherapist, so I see clients one-on-one in a therapeutic setting. So basically what that means is that I provide supportive listening, I provide advocacy, I provide help with things like resources and referrals if you should have any of those. And also in the future, if at any point during our counseling process you're interested in scheduling something like a family session, that's definitely something that we could do together. But my primary goal working with you is to see you one-on-one and address some of the reasons that you're here today. Okay? Do you have any questions about my role?
No, I was just curious as far as what, scheduling, like how often you like to see me, or, confidentiality,
Sure.
yeah, just kind of where that all falls in.
Yeah, those are really common questions for a lot of people who come in. And, I really like to put it in your hands. I think that you know what's best for your schedule and you know what's best for your life. A lot of the clients that I see, I typically will see them, maybe one time a week. Typically not more than once a week. But sometimes people will come in once every other week. Sometimes people come in once a month. But that's a really good question, and I think that's something that we could maybe discuss more towards the end of the session to see sort of what your thoughts are and where you're feeling comfortable with that. And then confidentiality, that's a really great topic to bring up because that's something that I wanted to go over with you as well. So as far as confidentiality goes within our clinic, everything that you say to me and our interactions with one another is completely confidential. And what that means is that anybody outside of our agency isn't going to know that you're receiving services here. So if somebody were to call me and ask, is so-and-so, is Aaron coming and seeing you for therapy or for counseling, and I couldn't confirm or deny that you were here. So you don't ever have to worry that I'm going to tell anybody about the things that you tell me about. However, there are some limitations to that confidentiality. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with mandated reporting?
I've heard of it.
Okay. So basically within mandated reporting, there's two sort of specific guidelines. The first one has to do with child abuse. So if you were to disclose to me that you know of somebody who's under the age of 18 that is going through abuse, that could mean physical abuse, it could mean neglect, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, anything like that. If you were to disclose that to me, I would have to report that to Child Protective Services. Mm-hmm. And that's because all the staff at this agency are mandated reporters, so it's part of our job, and the law as well. The other aspect to mandated reporting also has to do with self-harm. So if you were to tell me that you were suicidal or you were going to go out and hurt somebody else, so you felt homicidal, then that's also something that I would have to report, basically for the safety of you and the safety of everybody else. Do you have questions about that?
Yeah, I mean, partially because, one of the reasons I'm here is for, depression. Mm-hmm. So, that's come up as far as, some of the issues that I've had as far as, negative self-talk, thoughts like that,
mm-hmm.
I guess. So where do you draw the line as far as what you consider to be mandated to report
Sure.
as far as that type of suicide related?
Sure. Yeah, that's an excellent question, and I'd be happy to clarify that for you. So, say we're having a conversation about depression, and you're mentioning that in the past you've had some suicidal ideations. You've thought about suicide. It's been something that sort of has been maybe reoccurring over the course of your life. Maybe when you especially feel depressed or anxious. That wouldn't necessarily be something that I would have to report. Something that I would have to report probably would fall under the category of, us having a conversation and you saying, I'm feeling suicidal. I think when I leave here, I'm going to go out and drive my car into the lake. Okay, so with that, you're telling me that you have a plan, that you are serious about going out and truly harming yourself. And so for your safety, I would have to call the police. So with that, I would also, let you know that that's something that I would have to do.
That was my next question.
Yeah, so the same with all mandated reporting. So whether it's you disclosing to me about child abuse or it's you disclosing to me about feeling suicidal or homicidal, I'm going to let you know that I'm going to make that call. It's never my goal to make that call behind your back. And sometimes clients are worried that, they'll say something to me and I'm just, sitting here trying to wait for you to disclose something for me to call the police. And that's definitely not true. I want this to be an open relationship where we can discuss all sorts of different things. And I want you to be able to feel comfortable disclosing to me, if you're having those thoughts or those feelings. I think that's really important.
Well, and I want to feel like I can tell you things. Tell me a little bit about as far as like talking with people within your agency. Why would
Sure.
you have to talk with them if it's just supposed to be, between us?
Yeah, great question. So, sometimes as a therapist, it's helpful to kind of bounce ideas off of coworkers. So, have you heard the expression that two heads is better than one? Okay, so, sometimes when we're working together, I might run into a situation where maybe I feel like a certain approach when working with you would be best, but I'm not 100% sure of that approach. So I might talk to a coworker who knows more about a certain type of therapy or who maybe knows more about depression and how to react to certain situations. And that's helpful to me to be able to work with you and to help best address your issues. But names are always kept confidential, so it would never, be crossed that your name would be mentioned. It's always spoken in hypotheticals generally, unless it comes back to that mandated reporting aspect.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
Okay, excellent.
And would you disclose that as far as you feeling like you need to discuss them, or would that be kind of more of a when you need to do it, you do it type thing, or?
Sure. Usually, if I'm going to disclose to another coworker who works within the agency, it probably wouldn't be something that I would bring up to you. Just because within the agency, we're all bound to confidentiality.
Oh, okay.
So nobody can disclose outside of the agency. So we all work together basically as a big team to
Sure.
provide services to you. So even though I might be your individual therapist, we still work together as a team to provide the best services that we can for you.
Sounds like a good deal.
Yeah.
Pay for one and
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, you get a whole great team to be able to kind of come together and think of ideas and the best way to serve you. So it really is a wonderful thing, I think. But if at any point, you feel uncomfortable or something, gets too personal and you feel like you don't want that information shared, just let me know. I'm more than happy to respect that.
Okay.
Okay?
That sounds good.
Excellent. So kind of moving on from confidentiality, I just want to talk a little bit about maybe why you're seeking out services here. And I also want to talk a little bit about some of the experiences that you've had with counseling in the past. So why don't we start with services that you've had in the past. Have you received counseling anywhere before?
Yeah, in my teens.
Okay.
I started out, kind of the cliched ADHD, teenager, and
Sure.
some of that boiled over into, depressions, some self-harm, cutting, things like that. So it was, that was, 15 some years ago. So
Yeah.
I kind of thought I was past that. So I saw a counselor regularly. I think every couple weeks I would go talk with her, and I tried a couple different ones. Found one that I really felt comfortable with, and then spent I don't remember. It was probably a couple years that I worked with her.
Okay.
So.
So a pretty significant amount of time. So what about that counseling experience was helpful to you? Was there anything that stood out to you?
Well, just having, especially at that age, having somebody who was, an adult that I felt safe, being able to talk about stuff that I couldn't talk to other people about.
Sure.
Kind of getting some, I don't know, just some different feedback than what I was used to getting from parents or peers or siblings, teachers, whatever. So it just felt comfortable, like I could say whatever, and I didn't really worry about people judging me or thinking badly about me, and gave me some good advice as far as ways of dealing with difficult situations. Like I said, with kind of that negative self-talk, some coping mechanisms as far as with that, as far as I don't remember what they called it, but different types of thought stopping or things like
Sure.
that, which worked.
Great.
Through my 20s, things seemed okay. I had some, after I had stopped therapy, and then I went to school and did some other things, and it seemed like, other than a few ups and downs, normally,
Sure.
I was really not really needing services. I felt okay, and I didn't have those real negative self-talk that, I'm kind of the stuff that's going on now. So, but yeah, no, I that's one of the reasons why I, kind of sought out services. A friend of mine, Stacy, said he came here. He said he really liked working with you guys. I'm sure you've talked with him, and I don't know. He said that it was something beneficial. So, not really knowing where to start. So having somebody that said,
Sure.
"Hey, go try this. Go talk to this person." So I'm really just kind of reaching out, now to look to see if I can get that same experience that I had before.
Yeah.
When I was having a difficult time.
Sure.
So.
So it really sounds like, when you were a teen, it was helpful to you to be able to build some coping skills and also have somebody that you can kind of bounce ideas off of. Maybe, if you're having a bad time or you're having some conflict in relationships, it might have been helpful to, or internal conflict, right? You mentioned negative self-talk, that kind of stuff, that it really was beneficial to you in that way. And so now it sounds like maybe you're having some similar issues that you had when you were a teen as far as like self-talk and depression, and that is something that you'd like to work on now.
Yeah, it has. Another thing I wanted to talk about too, if you want to, roll into that is, medications and, because I have taken stuff in the past for depression without, seeing a therapist, stuff
Sure.
that, my family doctor had, prescribed, and also with the ADHD medication. But yeah, no, so I mean, I know one step at a time, one thing at a time. But
Sure.
yeah. So yeah, as far as other experiences with that, with the medications and
Okay.
as well as but mostly the therapy was a while ago.
Sure. Okay.
So.
So was there anything about the therapy services that you received in the past that you felt didn't work for you?
I mean, the things that didn't work for me were, I guess, more or less when I guess it had more to do with me.
Okay.
I guess I never got any bad, or I never felt like I got any bad, or thought I got any bad insight or advice or whatever you want to call it, that wasn't necessarily helpful. Some people suggested journaling, and
Sure.
I can't remember. I mean, I really wasn't into journaling. That really wasn't something that worked for me very well. It really that one sticks out, the most. But
Sure.
nothing that really I thought, oh my gosh, that it had the opposite effect or anything. So.
Okay. So maybe just some unhelpful suggestions,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to coping skills. There's a huge list of them, and then some of them are kind of cliche. So journaling can be one of those cliche ones, right? It works for some people, but it doesn't necessarily work for everybody. It's kind of similar to exercising or, going out for a walk. Sometimes those things work, sometimes they don't, but it sounds like, you got some helpful coping skills, but maybe some that just weren't so helpful, and that was kind of part of the downfall to that counseling. But overall, it sounds like it was a really positive experience for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also sounds like that was really a strength that you had during your teenage years. You were able to seek out help and utilize it in a positive way.
Well, my mom kind of made me, so.
Did she?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, well, she didn't make me, but she was very much encouraging, and
Sure.
it's kind of a compromise
Oh, okay.
thing. So.
Yeah. So, speaking of your mom, can you tell me a little bit maybe about your support system? Who would you consider your support system?
My girlfriend. I still talk with my parents. Regularly, but I don't necessarily. I guess they're still a support system. They're not. I don't think they're in a place where they need to hear, kind of my issues. I'm sure if there was any problem that I had that it was really, severe, they would be there in a heartbeat to help me. But it's just, I guess maybe it just feels like the relationship changed, where I feel like now I'm an adult. I'm supposed to do those things on my own. I'm supposed
Sure.
to, not burden them. They're older. They're in their, 60s. They're dealing with their own stuff. So,
Sure.
and my mother herself, she's got anxiety issues, and so I guess I don't feel like I said, I don't want to burden them with that. But if need be, I could reach out to them.
Sure.
Have some close friends, coworkers, people that I feel comfortable enough with that if I just need somebody to pick me up, or to give me a a hug or whatever that may be, or take go out and have a coffee or something, then
Sure.
there's people like that there. It's not. I think my biggest problem is feeling like I can reach out to them, especially when now when it feels like I'm sure, as with depression, there's kind of that cliche. You want to do something about it, but you don't want to do something about it, or
Yeah.
you feel like you don't have the energy to do it, or you don't have the motivation to do it. You just kind of feel stuck, or at least that's how I feel.
Sure.
So,
So that's how you're feeling now. You're feeling stuck.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm very stuck. That's a good way of putting it. I feel like I've tried everything that's worked in the past, and it's not working the way it was before.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Well, and from what you're saying, it sounds like you do have a few people at least that you're able to reach out to when you need to vent or just to talk to, like you mentioned. Just a hug sometimes can be helpful. Okay. Would you consider, the people in your support system mostly positive relationships?
Yeah, I don't, most of the people that I've had, negative relationships with are either, people that are, friends you don't see for long periods of time.
Sure.
You don't necessarily spend a lot of time with them, or I've excluded them out of my life. So, no, I don't feel like there's, other than, maybe some mommy issues. I don't know, because like I said, she has a lot of anxiety. So when I feel like I reach out to her, sometimes I've gotten not the best feedback. So
Okay.
so that's another reason why I kind of choose to limit what I disclose to them
Sure.
about what I'm going through.
Sure.
You know, so.
Okay. Yeah, and you know, it can be extremely common for people who come in to say that, you know, they feel like they do have a support system, but sometimes they feel like they don't want to necessarily be a burden to their support system. So I know you had heard you had mentioned that before about sometimes feeling like, you know, you don't want to burden your parents, or sometimes wanting to burden friends about, you know, feelings of depression. And so I think it's excellent that you chose to seek out counseling or therapy services, because that could just be another strength and another support system, hopefully, that can be beneficial to you, in addition to the strengths that you already have and the support system that you already have.
Yeah, I really feel like I'm, you know, I don't know if you've experienced depression. Um, is it something that you haven't firsthand knowledge of?
Sure. So, you know, I think that everybody experiences depression at one point or another. You know, whether or not somebody has a diagnosis is not super relevant in my book, because I think everybody deals with depression in different ways, and I think people experience it at different levels, at different points in their lives. So, sure, I felt depressed before, you know, but I'm more than happy to talk to you about your depression and you know, some of the things maybe that you've tried in the past to deal with depression, and to be a support system to you in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
So, moving on. Oh,
Well,
sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, the reason why I was asking is because feeling kind of stuck, it's, you know, concerned things, you know, the depression will progress, so I'm hoping that, you know, that I can, you know, we can kind of either move along quickly, or we can, you know, find something that works, you know. But yeah, that's why I was asking, so.
Sure. Yeah, that's okay. You know, and the thing about therapy too is that there's not always a very specific timeline. So, you know, sometimes therapy can take, you know, a couple years. Sometimes people come in and feel like they're in crisis, and then they can feel like they have improved in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. So really the timeline and of you coming in and seeking out services could be varied. It just depends on how you're feeling as we progress.
Sure.
So.
Would you, I have another question.
Sure.
Could you make diagnoses? Would you make a diagnosis based on information? I mean, would that be beneficial? Would that be a hindrance? Would that be a negative? Would that be a positive? I mean, I always worry about stigma associated with stuff like that. So, and I know with the confidentiality, that's one thing, but yeah, it's just a concern I have. You know,
Sure.
Then you're going to get a medication if that may be, you know, it, and then, you know, people, oh, you're taking this or whatever. But so, would you be able to make a diagnosis, or do you do that type of?
Sure. Yeah, that is something that we do here. We do help patients and diagnose. A lot of times we do diagnosing for medication purposes. So, you know, if we were to talk about depression, and I'm not sure if you already have a diagnosis, we haven't necessarily talked about that yet, but if you hadn't, and I was to help treat you in your depression, and maybe medications might be a part of that, I can help with the diagnosis. I'm not able to help with prescribing medications. Okay. So if you're looking for medication for depression, I would give you a referral to a psychiatrist.
Okay.
And so a psychiatrist is a doctor that specializes in mental health and would probably be able to hopefully fit you with an appropriate medication.
And would you still see me then with after? Oh, okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So if that happens to come up, that's certainly something that we can address in future sessions.
Okay.
Okay. So we only have a few minutes left in our session, so I kind of want to talk about some goal planning, and maybe talk about some of the things we'll go over in future sessions. Okay. So when you think about the reason that you're coming in for counseling, and maybe some things that you want to gain out of counseling, could you maybe tell me, I don't know, maybe 1, 2, 3 things that you really would like to focus on, and goals that you might have going forward?
Well, like I said, feeling kind of stuck with the depression feelings is starting to impact, you know, my sleep. It's starting to impact kind of my relationship slightly. I feel like I kind of, people might say, oh, what's wrong or something, and I can usually just, oh, I'm tired, or I had it,
Sure.
and then other days I can put on that face and, be fine.
Sure.
So I guess, looking for, feeling like if things escalate, like you said, there's resources out there that you might be able to tie me into.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that just, from the initial and kind of going, okay, well, we've got a plan now, or at least starting with a plan.
Sure.
That, I'll be able to work through some of the kind of the depression going on now, and then, hopefully developing some of those more coping skills, or maybe even understanding it better.
Okay.
I just don't understand why things can be fine, and then all of a sudden, this starts happening. Is it, starting a different job? Is it,
Sure.
so I know there's only so much you can answer in the time, or that we can talk about in the time that we have, but, so yeah, really just working on help, dealing with the depression, if medication is something that you think would be beneficial.
Okay.
I'm taking one, but it's the Wellbutrin, and it's so I can try to stop smoking too. So it's kind of a double edge with
Sure.
that. But yeah, so just kind of finding those resources, hopefully setting some goals as far as, how do you even measure, do I feel less depressed, do I feel more depressed, do I feel more depressed or less depressed over a weekly period than I
Sure.
would normally, or is it just go away,
Okay.
type thing. So maybe gaining some of that knowledge and understanding would be beneficial for me.
Sure. Okay.
So yeah, I think that's the main reason why I'm here.
Okay.
I don't feel like I'm at that point where I'm, planning self-harm, but with those intrusive thoughts, that negative thoughts, that stuff creeps in there. But
Sure.
I don't feel like it's something of a concern at the moment. But I feel that if I do have another support system, that if that did come up, that I would feel way more comfortable talking about it before it gets to that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Okay. So, from some of the things you just said, it kind of sounds like you'd like to work on maybe some self-awareness about depression. So being able to recognize your thoughts and maybe your feelings before depression cycles happen, maybe practicing some thought stopping could be a good skill we could work on. Working on relationships, you had mentioned that, so that could be a good goal that we could work on. And also just working on your depression in general, so identifying some coping skills and things that maybe you can do to, or resources rather, to work on depression, maybe community resources or medication, and that's all something we'll definitely discuss further.
Sure.
So for next time, when you come in next time, I think we could definitely start focusing on talking about some of the resources that are out there, maybe also talking about some of your history with depression. So if those are a couple of things that you'd like to think about, maybe resources that you've tried in the past, or ways in the past that you've tried to deal with depression, will be helpful.